So, Toby, we're here as part of our Shop Local campaign for Chesterfield, and we thought we'd have a walk around the town centre and discuss a few issues. We're stood outside the market hall, first of all, which has had a huge reinvestment over the past couple of years, and it's now full. This is one of the success stories of Chesterfield's town centre.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is about reimagining the town centre. I think Market's a good example of that. People aren't in a position like they were 50 years ago where they had to go into town. We have to make it attractive. They've got alternatives. They can go online. They can go to other destinations as out of town offers as well. So it's about making it somewhere that people want to be, and I think that's the mindset for everything that's planned in terms of the town centre.
And with this particular building, it's not full of any big chains. It's a lot of independent, small retails. But we speak to these, and in this particular location in the town centre, a lot of these retailers are actually thriving. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it is important that you have places place you can go that has different offers to what you get in the major sort of malls and so on. So that independent retail is very important, because around the corner here, Lamb's Cupcakes, it's a great example of independent, really successful retailers offering something that you couldn't get elsewhere. So I think it is important you've got something different on offer.
Yeah, and I guess these are the sorts of stores that you can't particularly buy stuff online as well. We're stood outside the old sweet shop. I know that they do advertise being on eBay, but if you want a bag of sweets, you're more likely to go to the shop.
Yeah, that's right. I think certainly town centres are much more about the sort of food and drink offer now than they historically were. Obviously, a lot of clothes retailing has gone online, but very well served in terms of coffee shops and other kinds of things here. So it is important. It's a destination. There's places that people can go.
And if we just take a look across there, where the old post office building was, this is a different way that the council are trying to utilise the town centre, in the fact that it's being turned into residential property. Which is that the future for a centre like Chesterfield? There are a few empty spaces. Is this a way to bring people back into the town centre?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there needs to be more residential in the town centre, so that there's something happening here after 4 or 5 o'clock at night. Clearly, we've got more out-of-town buildings because of the internet as well. The need for the amount of retail space that town centres had 40 years ago isn't the same as what it is today. So I think that having more residential in the town centre is definitely something to support. But also thinking, as I was walking down, the street there, looking up the street here, I think there's one empty unit there, but every unit along here is full. All the ones up that street were full. I think it is tempting to sort of walk around and just spot an empty unit, but actually you've got 93% of the stores in Chesterfield that are being used. That stands up very well against the vast majority of other town centres. So we need to recognise the shape of town centres is changing. Yes, get more people living in here, but also recognise how much better we're doing than many other towns that I could mention around here.
And when you talk about residential, I guess in terms of retail, more residential properties, people living in the town centre offers retailers different opportunities. For instance, we did have a Morrison's convenience store in the town centre not too long ago. That wasn't successful. The Morrison's chain wasn't successful, but there aren't that many other convenience stores in the town centre at the moment, and that's because there aren't people living in the town centre to use them. But that could be another opportunity to fill some of the empty units. Yeah, definitely. I think that if you've got more people living here, then coffee shops maybe stay open longer. You've got more of a sense as you're walking through of something happening. We're here now in the middle of the day, very busy, but if you were to come here 5 or 6 o'clock at night, much less of a sense of things going on. And I think being able to have a sense that there's something happening throughout the day would be really beneficial, but it would need more than sort of 10 apartments in the old post office to make that happen. Well, we've had a walk up towards the main market area, and we're stood outside Marks and Spencer and Primark. Let's talk about the main market first. I mean, the market is so important to Chesterfield. Its history as a market town, it is why a lot of tourists come into Chesterfield. A lot of people say the market isn't what it was, though. Toby, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it isn't what it was. We talk about Primark and the impact that sort of pilot high, sell it cheap clothing retails had on the market. I think that you go anywhere in any market town, they'll tell you they haven't got the number of units that they had 10 or 15 years ago. And certainly on a Monday, it's a lot quieter than it is. You come here on a Thursday to Saturday, it's very busy. The market's incredibly important in terms of giving that sense of life to the town centre and the sense of hustle and bustle. And, one of the things that whenever you get visitors, tourists coming to Chesterfield, they're massively impressed with our market because it's much bigger than in their own towns. But to us from Chesterfield, it's not as big as it used to be. So I think it is a case of sort of celebrating what we have. Yes, there does need to be a constant look at consolidation and design of the market, but I think also a realistic, recognition that with some of the kind of Poundland type retailers that we have now, the idea that the market is always much cheaper than what the retailers are isn't the same. But what the market can do is offer, fresh food produce, but also hopefully those innovative, different kind of products that you couldn't necessarily get elsewhere. And I think that's the future of the market. We had the medieval market last week. We had a children's market where a lot of youngsters turn their hand to running a market stall. And I think it is about having different kinds of things to make the market relevant in the 21st century.
Is that what the council needs to do more of in the future, be innovative in terms of what they utilise this space for? We mentioned different markets, and I was here last week when the medieval market was on, and it was absolutely ran because the weather was good. We've also seen this space used for the big wheel, of course, earlier on in the year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people will use the town centre if there is something to make it a more attractive destination than sitting at home on the keyboard ordering stuff online. So things like that are incredibly important. I think we've had continental markets before. We've had traders here from Germany and Belgium, France, Italy. Things like that are great. Anything that just makes it a destination for people to want to visit, and the wheel's a huge success. Who would have thought in the middle of February you would have queues down the street in the town centre? And what it shows is that when there are things in the town centre, then people will travel here, whether it be to paying for parking or whether it be coming on the bus or whatever. People will come. But I think when there isn't things on, that's where your town centres are going to struggle. So it is about the town centre working together with retailers, market traders and others to make it a destination that people want to travel to.
And the council always say to us when we speak about these events that they are very costly to put on. But when you look at just how busy the town centre was last Wednesday, just for something like the medieval market, I'm sure they would have made some profit out of that. So is it a case of spending to make money?
Sometimes you do have to speculate to accumulate. You look at the big wheel. Didn't council spend virtually nothing on that? It basically gave the space on a peppercorn rent. But the guy who put the big wheel up made the money out of the big wheel, and the council got it effectively for nothing. So I think it does show that you don't always have to spend money to do things that can make a material difference. I think it's also a case of looking at things like the medieval market. Yes, you put on a little bit of sort of street entertainment, obviously needs paying for, but getting people into the towns, going to bring its own revenues in. But it's also, we've got to support those market traders who are here week in, week out, so that they're not just sort of every time there's an exciting thing shoved off the market.
Yeah, I mean, when speaking to some of these market traders, they've said about their pitch rates going up in the last couple of years. Do you think it is a fair rate at the moment from your point of view?
Yeah, I mean, you can get a market stall from smaller ones from £5 a day. So if they're doing decent trade, then £5. Obviously, if you've got a great big stall, you're going to be paying more. But the rates for a market stall are pretty small. The biggest thing that market traders talk to me about is get people there. If there's people there, they don't mind paying the rents. But the market costs the council. It's not a profit centre for the council. I think it costs a couple £100,000 a year to have that, but we think it's very much something worth investing in. But you can't just continually do everything for nothing, because obviously it's ratepayers that are paying that money in the final analysis.
Across from the market is Marks and Spencer's, one of the heritage stores, if you like, for a town centre. We've seen Marks up sticks from a lot of town centres across the UK. Just how important is it for Chesterfield that a brand like M&S continues to be here, because that is a big shop floor as well?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's incredibly important. I think we've attracted Debenhams here a bit further down into the town. We can be success with the Premier Inn Hotel moving into the Co-op. So the fact that major retail names like that are showing confidence in Chesterfield is incredibly important. And we will do anything we can to fight to make sure that as Marks and Spencer's are continuing to go through a period of downsizing, we try and make sure they stay here in Chester.
So we've moved on to Vicar Lane, which was stood outside the Burger King restaurant, one that used to be a card shop, I believe, and as we walk a bit further down, the old Co-op Travel is empty, and then the Argos building is another empty one, and Tony and Guy across from that. This seems to be an area of Chesterfield. We just come from the Market Square, which seems to be thriving, doing quite well, and there are some new developments with the residential area that's being built there. But Vicar Lane, which is the newest part of the town centre, I guess you may say, seems to be struggling a little bit at the moment because of all these empty spaces. What's your thoughts on here at the minute, Toby?
Well, I think you go down, this is on Steeplegate, obviously Vicar Lane itself, I think it's a lot busier. Sometimes you go through a period of time where, for various reasons, 2 or 3 different retailers close. I've not heard of anything specific in terms of the rates or whatever, but I know that in some of these areas they are run by private landlords, and in some of those cases, even though the store's gone, the landlord's got a long-term contract and continues to get paid, so there's not that much of a motivation for them to actually get a new retailer in and be a bit more competitive. Landlords do have to pull their weight in terms of making sure they're being realistic about the rates that they can get, and it's also important that the government aren't being too demanding in business rates, because that is something that business rates has been excessive for some of the retailers, and all of those put pressure on retailers who want to stay in business.
And a lot of these shops that we've just walked past that were in these units, a lot of these businesses, they're the big multinational companies that have either moved out of town. Argos is a good example. Burger King has always had that out of town stop in Chesterfield, and they came into town and it's not worked for them. Tony and Guy, another one that has moved out of town. So is it a case of just these big chains feeling the squeeze? Does that mean it's not necessarily detrimental on what Chesterfield's doing? It's just it's a national trend. These are focusing more online.
There aren't national trends in some of these cases. I think Burger King and Tony and Guy are both franchise operations, so it's not so much that the management have decided to move. It's the case the franchise hasn't worked for whatever reason. I think that all of the aspects in terms of the number of customers they've got in, the amount they're paying in business rates, the amount they're paying in terms of rents and availability of staff, all these have impacts on retailers. So you do have, just as we stood opposite TJ Hughes now, which used to be Woolworths, and when was it H&M? It was Woolworths, I think it was. That was BHS. You get these major retail chains go under, new ones come in, and there's a bit of churn always there. But across the whole of the country, retail is struggling, and we're outperforming in Chesterfield, but that doesn't mean we're immune from it. We've still got many of those issues.
Can more be done to? I like this area of the town. It is a nice area when you look around. It's good to walk around it. It's the only one thing is that there are quite a lot of empty shops at the minute. Can more be done to get those filled again, maybe with pop-up shops or something like that. Is that an idea?
I think it's a great idea. I think, as I say, it comes back to who owns the store. Many of these cases moving up from here, they're privately owned, and if they've got a 25-year lease with a company, even if the company no longer trading from there, they might still be getting paid. So there isn't always an incentive on them to change it up. I think pop-up stores are great, give people an opportunity to try trading, but it's also about putting pressure on government not to accept. We have the most expensive corporate property tax in all of Europe with business rates, so that is excessive, and we're also seeing sometimes that the rents that people are charging are unrealistic. So it is a case of making the town centre as attractive as possible. If you get people there, then you're going to get more retailers there, but also make sure that these landlords are being realistic about what they can expect.
Is there something that could be done by the government to even things up between the shop owner and those retailers who are just online?
Well, certainly. I mean, it's something that's been talked about in the past. Obviously, the difficulty with online and sort of a UK tax is that the danger is what you do is push people to move their operations overseas, and they will be able to carry on selling exactly like they are, but just avoid that tax. So, doing things on a kind of pan-European basis are worth considering in terms of online. But I do think more needs to be done to try and balance up that tax that falls upon retailers through business rates in comparison to people trading online and maybe getting off scot-free in those regards.
And I know we touched on parking, but that is something that when we've spoken to people out and about, it always comes up. I know the council do incentives for residents. I myself have a pass that allows me to come in and park for free after 2 o'clock and Saturdays and Sundays I think for free, but it is one of those issues that when people come into the town they always almost begrudge paying parking. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I recognise that people go to the Raven side and they can park for free. You use town centre car parks, and obviously there's a cost there, and that is revenue for the council that is important. But it's important also it doesn't disincentivise people to come into town. The town centre was not built with 2018 levels of traffic in mind. It was built 60, 70 years ago when everyone came on the bus or even the tram before that. So as these things have changed and people's shopping habits have changed, there is a need to sort of keep pace with that. I think the council have done what they can in terms of having the residents parking badge, which means that after 3 o'clock you can park up free. Got rid of the night rates that used to be here that were a disincentive to people to go and visit the things like the Pomegranate and the Winding Wheel and our nighttime economy. But there is a limit to what can be done because that is important revenue for the town, for the council as well.
Overall, though, Chesterfield Town Centre, we are encouraging people to shop local. We know that it's doing well compared to a lot of town centres in the country, whether it is the shopping part of it or your restaurants, cafes. But something that we do hear from retailers a lot is use it or lose it, and that's what Shop Local is trying to encourage people to do. And would you echo that?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's a fantastically important scheme, and we've got to make the town centre somewhere that people want to go rather than somewhere that people have to go. That's the only way you can compete these days. So it is important the council continue to make sure there's street entertainment, that there's things for kids to do, there's decent variety of eating and drinking establishments here. But we do also need to encourage people to shop here, because the more people that shop here in the town centre, the more retailers will be here, the better an offer there is. And similarly, that is a vicious circle in the opposite direction. People stop coming, the retailers leave, and then when you do need to come, you find there's nothing here. So, in both regards, the more people are here, the better an experience it will be.